Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with another Path of Exile crafting video, and in this one I will teach you how to craft the boots that is used for most minion builds, which is the drop of brittle ground whilst moving with either a life regen or something like I was just linked earlier with the chance to avoid bleeding implicit modifiers from the Eldritch influence. But these are the CI boots. I will briefly mention the life boots first, and I'll talk about the low budget crafting of this, and I will talk about the higher budget crafting for this as well, of how to achieve items like this the best way possible. Do keep in mind that the medium/high budget version for this, especially the CI one, does come with a pretty hefty price to craft, but there are easier ways to do it. I'm going to show you this entire process through Craft of Exile. So I'm going to go to the emulator in here, which allows me to simulate the crafting of this. So let's say we take a pair of sorcerer boots and we craft them with HP. The process for HP crafting is very simple. You would use essences and you would go for the greed, and the tier 1 gives you a chunk of HP. In this case, I got a tier 1 HP with the essence, which is better than the tier 1 craft that you can hit on the boots. And you have two choices. You can craft with these essences because they're somewhat cheap till you hit the mods you want, or you have two other options. One is spam them till you get a decent movement speed roll, which is not too hard to hit, but it can go pretty crazy. This time we got a tier 3, and for boots you want to have tier 2 or tier 1. Tier 1 requires item level 86 if I'm not mistaken. The other process for this, for example, here we have a tier 2 movement speed, we have some resistances, and this would be a keeper. You can even bench craft the prefixes. Now if you want to fiddle around with the suffixes on this, you would then go to Eldritch crafting before you fix the implicits, and you would make Eater of Worlds dominant by having Eater of Worlds implicit higher than the Searing Exarch, which allows you to use the Eldritch Chaos Orbs, which will re-roll. In this case, it will only re-roll the suffix modifiers. And you do this till you get whatever stat you want, for example, Chaos Rest or a bunch of intelligence or resistances, whatever stat you're looking for. If you're using another type of base, you can get strength or dexterity as well, for example. So that's the generic way of crafting the life versions. In more cases than not, you're better off actually buying these. But then again, if you want to craft them, this is how you do it. When it comes to energy shield boots, however, the process is a little bit trickier. First off, you want to buy energy shield boots with a high percentile of energy shield. And what you do is you want to have the highest base energy shield boots, which is sorcerer boots. So you search for that, and then you look at the base percentile. You want to have that at 100%. The way this works, we also want to have item level 84 or higher, or 86 if you want to go for that. It's actually the base energy shield here, non-unique. There we go. The base energy shield here goes from up to 59 energy shield. This is what the base percentile is referring to, the base actual energy shield on the item before you craft. And to get the most energy shield out of this, you want to have as high percentile as possible. So you can buy these for like 5 chaos and start crafting them. In some cases, you might even want to purchase the already pre-enchanted movement speed if you haven't been hit recently. Obviously, these is going to cost a little bit more. Normally, you have to pay about an exalted. But as you can see, they tend to go up. This one's are influenced already. But normally you pay about an exalted. This is to create an opportunity where you spend less time, and you also create an item that is more attractive on the market. So that's how you buy the base item. So in our case, we're going to do this by spamming. First, we're going to take a 20%. And the first step for energy shield is to use fossils and use a perfect fossil to improve the quality on the item, which goes from, I think it's 15 up to 30%. And in this case, we hit 30%. So your first step of crafting them for the better version would be to use perfect fossils. If you want to keep the budget down, stop at 28 or higher, or even 27 or higher, just to keep the cost down. And for the lower budget version of crafting this, you would not use dense fossils, which is part of the higher budget version. Instead, we're going to focus on the first step of this video on essence crafting. The essence crafting when it comes to energy shield is the Woe essence. Now, Woe essence, as you can see here, gives you up to 45 energy shield, whereas a tier 1 flat energy shield gives you up to 49. So it's slightly worse than a tier 1 modifier, but it guarantees this energy shield roll on every hit. There are two things you're looking for. You want to have high movement speed, and you want to have high percent energy shield. Now, if you get one of those modifiers and the other modifiers open, you have a few options to do. So I'm going to craft a couple of these just to show you. In this case, I did hit a tier 1% energy shield, which makes it valuable to use an annulment orb to try to get rid of the other modifiers, which didn't happen here. So we would then keep spamming these essences. And as you can see here, we're looking for very specific modifiers on the prefixes. Now we got a tier 1 movement speed. We have a mana. I would also use an annulment in this, try to get rid of the mana, which didn't happen. So back to essences, life roll, trash mods. Actually, what was that? That was a 30% movement speed. I would try to annul that. I did. If this happens, you can bench craft % energy shield, which would then create a situation where your prefix is now done. Now, if you do this with a higher % or higher mod 73, you can see that we're actually up on 191 energy shield, which is really, really good for these type of items, right? And the way to fix the suffixes is by using Eldritch Currency. Now, Eldritch Currency would be that you create a situation where the Eater Worlds is dominant by using this. And now we know that Eater World has a higher tier of Searing Exile, because Searing Exile isn't even on the item, which allows you to use the Eldritch Chaos Orbs that will re-roll the suffixes and nothing else. And you would do this similar to the life-based boots, to whatever type of stats that you're looking for in the suffixes. You can also bench block and use an Exalted Orb, and you can annul it if you feel like there's one mod that's really bad that you want to get rid of. Keep in mind that with this process, I'm not able to benchcraft the suffix because we're using that in the prefix slot. Another example of this is when you end up with these with a decent % energy shield roll. So I'm just going to do this a little bit, see if that happens. It doesn't, so I'm just gonna add it. So in case you end up with a modifier that looks like this instead, they say you have a tier 2% energy shield, you have an open prefix, but you don't have movement speed, you have a choice to spend a bit more currency. By bench crafting, a prefix can't be changed, like this, which costs 2 exalteds. If you don't have an open suffix slot, you can actually make Eater World's implicit dominant and then just use an Eldritch Annulment to open up that suffix slot. So 2 exalteds in this, which allows you to use a Veiled Chaos Orb. Veiled Chaos Orbs reforges the item with a new random modifier, including a Veiled modifiers. And obviously there's a risk that you don't get your prefix filled. Also a risk that you do fill the prefix with a non-veiled modifier that is not a movement speed roll, which means you have to annul it, and if that fails, you're back on start with using essences. So I'm going to do this once, and as you can see, we got a prefix veiled here, and now we can't block anything because the prefix is already filled, and I would unveil this, which is about a 10%-ish risk of not giving me a movement speed. In this case, we did get a movement speed, which is right there, and now we're on the same thing that you could do with the previous version I talked about, which is making sure Eater Worlds is the dominant implicit, and then using the Chaos Orbs to re-roll whatever suffixes you're looking for. And that's basically how you craft the low budget version of this. When it comes to the higher budget version of this, it gets a little bit trickier. Obviously, you want to start with a 100% percentile on the Sorcerer boots. You want to make sure you get 29 or preferably 30% quality, because you're going to be spending a lot of currency in this, and make sure that the perfect fossils hits 30% quality. And now we're going to be using dense fossils. Now, dense fossils is a little trickier because we're looking for tier 1 flat energy shield with either tier 1 or tier 2% energy shield. So to give you an idea of the average of this, you can actually utilize the Craft of Exile to find out that if you're looking for tier 2 or higher % with a tier 1 flat energy shield, it will tell you, if I do a compute best selection here, it will actually calculate and tell you that you're just going to spam dense fossils. Sometimes, depending on the market, you might want to use a sanctified, but it's not going to be the case in here. So you spam dense fossils, and I can verify that to hit a tier 2 or higher %, it's going to happen once every 49 tries. And if you then change this to have a tier 1 only, you can see that it's 1 in 97. So that's the expected average. That doesn't mean that it's going to guarantee you to hit it, but it's going to be a chance for you to hit it, which allows you to be in a position where you have a chance of hitting this when you're crafting. So we're going to go back to this and show you the process. We're just spamming this, and the idea is to hit tier 1 flat, which goes from 39 flat or higher. Tier 1 flat, 46 right here. Oh wow, we actually hit it. So in this case, I would annul it, because you have to open the prefix to do the Veiled Chaos metacraft to get the movement speed on the high budget version, which is very expensive. So in this case, I would actually annul it, and now it bricked, which means you go back to dense fossil spamming. You would do this process till the item looks like this, with either tier 1 or tier 2%. When this happens, we do the same thing as we did before. We do the prefix can't be changed with a Veiled Chaos Orb, And now we got a veil suffix, but nothing happened on the prefix, which means you have to spend another 2 exaltas to do this again, another veil chaos orb, and now we got a veil prefix. You would unveil this, and we got movement speed. If you didn't get movement speed, you would have to again annul the item, and if that bricks the item, you restart the process. This is why these boots are very expensive and very hard to craft. So now that we got the movement speed, we do the exact same thing we've done with the life boots and the low budget version of crafting these boots. We get the Eldritch currency, make sure Eater Worlds has the highest version compared to the Searing Exarch. And then you use Eldritch Chaos Orbs. The stats you're looking for is high tier resistances, high tier intelligence. So those, like in this case, I have a high tier intelligence. You want to make them better. I would actually use an Eldritch Annulment to try to remove the Lightning Rest, which didn't happen here. And now just keep crafting till certain outcomes happen. For example, in this case, we have a lightning resistance with no intelligence. However, this is where Craft of Exile gets really, really nice. If I try to remove these crafts and we do this, you can actually check on the item which item has the highest weight of pool. And in this case, we can verify that intelligence has 9 different outcomes, which gives you the highest probability of hitting this. However, the second one that you can actually bench craft to block, as it's called, is actually Energy Shield Recharge, which you can verify by checking the fact that this one has 5,000 weight. And I can see, if I look at the craft versions, that I can actually bench Energy Shield Recharge here, which prevents this modifier from rolling, which gives me the highest probability of slamming the actual intelligence. So now that we can verify and understand that process, we would then bench craft suffix and go for Energy Shield Recharge. There we go. Bench craft this one and use Eldritch Exalted Orb. Smack that in. We got a high tier resistances. But that's fine as well. You would do this, and if it fails, then you go back to Chaos Orbing if you ever at any given time brick this. I normally try to do this till I hit a high tier intelligence and try to slam the high tier rest. In this case, I did get a high tier rest. This is actually a really cool pair of boots right now. And I would leave the suffix open to bench myself. So there's a few things you can play around with. And then you obviously want to fix the implicits. For the minion builds, you want to use greater or lesser till you get a dropped brittle ground when you're moving, essentially. Like this one right here. And the suffix from the Eater of Worlds. Either you can go for the chance to avoid bleeding. You can go for a bunch of different other modifiers, which you can actually verify again through Craft of Exile while scrolling down, seeing the Searing Exarch. In our case, we're looking for the Eater Worlds, which has anything from life regen, which is the generic one, to avoiding the bleed effects and whatnot. So you can just look in through the mods here, see which ones you want, and then just simply apply them through using the Icarus. In this case, we got avoid elemental ailments, damage, CDR, poison, and whatnot. And hitting the life region is very easy. As life region is super big for most minion builds, you can just use the cheapest one. And there you go. That's how you craft the high-end version of the CI boots for minion builds. So I don't want to take up too much time with this video. I hope you guys had use of the guide. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content. There will be a written guide for this to make sure you stay up to date in case this crafting method gets outdated. Always check the written guide, and it's available in the links in the descriptions below as soon as it's posted. Guys, till next time, as always, stay safe, keep rocking.